positive people is actually part of the dream of one person, and that is Dominic. He registered the organization and he had every intention of working at it and launching it and doing a lot of work himself. When Dominic was found to be HIV positive, the personal trauma that he went through gave him, I think, the motivation to try and make it easier for people who were caught in the same kind of situation.
मैं 16 साल हुई इस बीमारी में हूँ। इससे पहले मैं बाहर दवा देती थी और मुझे मालूम पड़ा कि मुफ्त में दवा मिल रहा है, तो मैं मुफ्त में दवा में उधर गई। तो वहाँ पर जाने से मालूम पड़ा मुझे वहाँ की एक महिला है संस्था जो समाज सेविका का काम करती है। उसने मुझे पूरा अपने बारे में बताया कि वो लोग किस तरह से काम करते हैं इसके बीमारी पर। तो उनके साथ में मैं उनके साथ में मिलकर बैठकर बात करे, सब करे। मैं उनके साथ में 2-3 दिन मैं कंटिन्यू उनके साथ जा रही थी, उनके बाहर काम करते वक्त तब उनके साथ जा रही थी। तो उस तरह से सीख लिया मैंने किस तरह से काम करना है, क्या करना है। और मैं अभी खुद मैं एक पॉजिटिव पीपल एक संस्था है उसमें काम करती हूँ और वहाँ पर सीख कर मुझे जितना आता है उतना मैं सीखते गई। उससे सीखते सीखते मुझे इतना नॉलेज मिल गया बहुत कि मैं अभी बच्चों के साथ, बड़ों के साथ, महिलाओं के साथ, सबके साथ काम कर रही हूँ। जब ये संस्था मुझे मिली उसने मुझे प्रोत्साहन किया कि कैसा करना है, क्यों करना है, क्यों ज़रूरी है, इसके बारे में बताया उसने मुझे। मैं बाकी की औरतों को भी, महिलाओं को मैंने बताया कि इस तरीके से सर्वाइकल कैंसर करना ज़रूरी है, किस तरीके से। तो इस तरह से हम लोग 15-10 ग्रुप करके उनको लेके जाते हैं मुफ्त के दवाखाने में, सरकारी दवाखाने में। और थोड़े लोग सरकारी दवाखाने में भी जाते हैं तो लोग को ये लगता है कि अपने बारे में, बीमारी के बारे में बताना थोड़ा ये लगता है, क्योंकि वो लोग बोलते हैं कि डॉक्टर्स, नर्सेस हमारे साथ में बराबर व्यवहार नहीं करते हैं। ग्रुप बनाते हैं हम लोग, जैसा महिला मंडल जैसा रहता है उस ग्रुप में ग्रुप रखते हैं। उनको ग्रुप में एक सिखाते हैं हम लोग, उनको पेपर बैग करना या कुछ और सिलाई कढ़ाई करना वो सिखाते हैं। और उनको कैसा उनका सेलिंग करना, उनको बाज़ार में कैसा बेचना है उसके बारे में भी बताते हैं। तो इसके लिए हम लोग महिलाओं को भी आगे बढ़ा रहे हैं कि आप लोग भी कुछ कर सकते हैं, आम आदमी कर सकते हैं। उस तरह से आप भी कुछ बड़ी हिम्मत से कर सकते हैं और मेरी तरह से 16 साल से आप जी सकती हैं, जैसे मैं काम कर रही हूँ उस तरह से। तो मेरे को इससे बहुत आनंद मिलता है कि काम करने के।
This is an address that is in a way very familiar to me because my friends and I would visit Dominic here. But today as I came, I had to reorient myself because everything is different. It became a big part of my life for some time, especially so when he was given interim relief and he was allowed out of that isolation room where he was isolated for a couple of months. And then he came home and he couldn't go out, so we would come here and we would visit him. But things have changed and the house is all derelict now. It's falling apart in a sense. Perhaps in a sense symbolic of all the difficulties and the hurdles that Dominic had to cross. And also every single HIV positive person finds that over the years, difficulties do keep piling actually, and perhaps things are comparatively easier today than they were 25 years ago when positive people started work. Life isn't really easy if you are either infected or in some way affected by HIV/AIDS. In 1992, positive people started functioning. We began with a kind of spurt of creating awareness, and then slowly we found our feet, so to say. And then we moved away from here into rented places.
To begin with, when positive people, there was Loretta Pinto and Isabel Santarita was in Tamsin. It was just 4 or 5 of us, along with maybe one of the earlier staff, and we actually used to go around talking about HIV, at bus stands, or we would be like, I remember one year we got someone to make posters on what exactly HIV is. Positive people got a little bigger, we got a little more funds, and we had a few staff who used to actually go out into schools and talk to the students about HIV. And eventually we developed some kind of modules where we spoke about relationships, we spoke about sexuality.
And actually we went to court, and we got the law modified, although we could not get it repealed. This was the law that said that anybody who was found HIV positive in Goa had to be quarantined and deported. Actually, what the law had in mind was tourists who were identified as HIV positive, and they were quarantined and they were supposed to be sent back to their places of origin. But Dominic was, of course, from Goa, and therefore there was no way we could allow him to be quarantined for life. We heard about Anand Grover, and when we contacted him, Anand was extremely generous, and he took up the case with a very open spirit, with a great deal of knowledge, and he was completely committed to the case from day one.
The case had already been filed by Dominic's mother to release him from incarceration, because in Goa at that time there was what was known as the Goa Public Health Amendment Act, which amended the Public Health Act to the effect that if a person was suspected of being HIV, he or she, those days we did not talk of transgender people much, would be forcibly without consent tested, and on test, if the person reported to be HIV positive, then the person would be separated from the community and incarcerated. And that was the status of Dominic when he launched a case in the Goa bench of the Bombay High Court to challenge his incarceration, and also he challenged the act which allowed the government to do that. Dr. Gilada had already talked to me about the human rights issues in HIV. A person should not be discriminated. The person is like any other person. Just because the person has HIV, there is no question of any transmission by ordinary kind of relationships with the person. But despite all that, and me being a human rights lawyer, otherwise, when I went to Goa, I normally used to stay in a small hotel, but I went up to my room, and the room was the door was ajar, and I saw from the door a person lying on the bed. And I just read that Dominic had actually been released for whatever reason. And though I had never met him, I instinctively knew that it was Dominic. But the thought that went through my mind was, you'd be surprised, what is this HIV positive person doing on my bed? And then suddenly I realized, my God, what am I thinking? So my innate prejudices were coming to the fore. But having said that, the case was done, and Dominic and I became quite good friends, and I came to know much more about HIV from him and on a personal interaction level than I would from a book. The case was actually dismissed, but government was persuaded not to bring in a drastic law which had mandatory testing, breach of confidentiality, and then isolation, which I called an isolationist law. And as time went by, this was in 88, things were not looking too good for Dominic. As you know, by 92 there was no triple combination therapy, and just in the beginning of May, I can't remember the exact date, 2 days before Dominic died, I got a call from Claude Alvarez, a friend of mine from Goa, who also knew Claude well because they stayed in the same village, Para. Claude told me that Dominic was in Breach Candy Hospital and I should see him on Friday before I was to go to Delhi. So I went to Breach Candy in the evening and I met Dominic. Dominic actually was a very good-looking person, but on that day he was skin and bones. I was so apprehensive about what would happen to him, but every time I would ask or venture to ask how he was, he would just turn around to me and ask me what I was doing in terms of law. And then he asked me a fatal question, as it were. He asked me, firstly, whether I was still doing HIV work, and I said, of course I am doing it. Then he extracted a promise from me. He asked me to do and continue to do HIV work. And without batting an eyelid and without really seriously thinking about it, I said yes. Only later I would realize what impact that promise would be to me. Anyway, I left and I got a call on Sunday that Dominic had passed away, and there was going to be a funeral ceremony at Max Muller Bhavan in Mumbai. And to cut the long story short, I basically had to keep the pledge that I made to Dominic. And from 92 to 97, I actually became completely obsessed with HIV. It is as if Dominic had actually taken over my soul. I'm not a religious person, but I can tell you, anybody I met, I would only talk about HIV. And everybody thought I had gone mad. And then in 1997, we had done a very important case, which became to be known as MX versus ZY, where the Bombay High Court, through Justice Tipnis, gave a very important judgment. And the judgment was that a person who is HIV positive cannot be denied employment, because if he is HIV positive, he is not debilitated. So long as the person was functionally fit, that is the person able to do the job, has he got the right qualifications, and there is no significant risk in transmitting of HIV in the workplace, then the person cannot be denied employment in a public sector. So that was a very big victory for us. I had redeemed the pledge that I made to Dominic, and that was the occasion for me to go again to Goa and relieve myself of that pledge, as it were. So I had gone to Goa. I went to his mother's house, Lucy D'Souza's house, and you won't believe it, I'm not religious, as I said. I only saw Dominic in that house, and then I suddenly broke down crying. And when I got up, there was no Dominic. And I related this to people and they said, well, we can understand what you were for the last 5 years. So that is a very cryptid story of Dominic's relationship with me.
I had recently moved to Mumbai in search of employment, and I got news from Goa, from my family, that Dominic was diagnosed with HIV. I remember crying and feeling so devastated because he was a young man I'd kind of grown up with, and to think that he was in isolation in a former sanatorium, my heart broke, and I didn't know what kind of support he'd have, how his mother, his aged mother, was going to cope. So I took the decision to return to Goa and do whatever I could to be of some support to him. The last 1 year of Dominic's life was very intense. He got very involved with the organization that he'd set up, Positive People. He'd already started lobbying on behalf of HIV positive people. He started to attend workshops and seminars, and he was hopeful of a lot of achievements. He wanted to do a lot for people in similar situations.
As a person that I knew, he was a very, very kind-hearted soul, always thinking of the other person. Actually became very well known in HIV circles because of his ability to speak so well, because of his compassion and passion for people who became those living with HIV. And he did a lot of work, and in fact he became a celebrated HIV activist, not only in India but around the world.
When I was born, I don't know, I didn't knew that I am positive. Then after 3-4 months, my mom and dad died. So after that, I shifted to this hostel in Hyderabad. So there I stayed for maybe 5 years. Then they tested the blood of all children. So they came to know that 3 people are positive over there. In that, even I was there. Then I went to, they shifted me to other hostel. Then they were taking care of us, like they were good to us, and they used to give medicines and all. Then after that I came to Goa. In 2010 I came to know that I am positive. That doctor had consulted with me saying that you're positive. 4 years ago I met positive people. I like to speak to Peter sir. He's a counsel, I mean he's a NGO person also, and he's a friend also, like my father. He's good to children, and he helped me a lot to make my documents for the traveling, for the hospital nurse. We had a camp, children camp, sunburst camp, so we all involved, like all children. I didn't knew that there are more children who are positive. Then when I came to that camp, I was happy. Like first I used to think that I'm alone, like positive. I'm doing my computer course right now, and I'm working also in the NGO. Yeah, I never had a problem. Like all were good to me. Like I never think about this, that I am positive and all. So I'm happy with this life.